Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or good night, whatever time you're joining us for our project here today. So, you've seen a lecture on contemplation, and you know that and when we do contemplations, we use our imaginations to fill out a biblical scene, and then we reflect on what we saw as we watched the scene play out before us. Now, a good way to get started on this and to get some practice is to see how someone else has done the contemplation. And painting is a great way to do this because the artist needs to take the passage from the Bible and create an image and add all kinds of detail that often the Bible leaves out. Now, today we're going to be looking at Caravaggio's The Calling of St. Matthew. This call in Matthew's Gospel occurs in one verse, chapter 9, verse 9. And all that the author gives us is this. As Jesus passed on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at a customs post. He said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and followed him. And what we're going to be doing in the next few moments is looking at how Caravaggio fills out that scene with his own imagination as a springboard for our own attempts at contemplation. So here's our image, the calling of St. Matthew. You'll notice a couple of things right away, that there's hardly any light. It's all coming from this, I don't know if it's a spotlight, an open door, an open window, and that there's two groups of figures. This group of five figures sitting around a table. We don't know whether or not that's the customs bench or if Caravaggio is taking liberties with the scene. The other thing to notice right away is that we have a group, he's setting this in his own life. These clothes that the group around the table are wearing would have been very common for 16th century Italy when this painting was made. And on the other side, we have Jesus and St. Peter in what would have been traditional Roman garb from 2,000 years ago. So Caravaggio is placing the historical Jesus in his own modern world. And that's exactly one of the things you can do as you try to contemplate. So I want to zoom in on these figures on the right here, starting with Jesus and Peter. Remember, this is Caravaggio's imagination. He's struggling to see Jesus. You can barely see a slice of halo on above his head here. And this is a historical person. He leaves him and St. Peter in their own robes. This is the Jesus of the Bible. This is not some idea or philosophy. This is a real person, the God made flesh. And God reaches out across this void that separates the two figures in the painting. And this hand is a very important hand. It's the hand of Adam, as you can see here from Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel. And I love that he has Peter imitating him, trying to make the same gesture, but it's not perfect, right? Caravaggio is showing us the dynamic of the call, of how God works in our own lives and breaks through in order to reach us, right? This hand piercing the void that is in between the groups of figures. So let's look at the figures now on the left side of the screen. This is the calling of St. Matthew. And the wonderful thing here is Caravaggio, I think, gives us not one calling of St. Matthew, but three. The first is this young man here, hunched over his money. You can see that his face is only illuminated by the light reflecting off his hands. He's totally oblivious to God's call. Next, we have this man noticing the call, that startled look on his face, and pointing at himself as if to say, "Me?" Notice how scared and perplexed and bewildered he is. And finally, Caravaggio gives us this third figure, looking not at Jesus, but at Peter. Notice how his eyes are right across from Peter's hands. This is about to get up and follow. And he knows the church is human. He knows the church is imperfect, but he's ready to go. You can see him on his little stool here. Let me zoom out a little bit. He's ready to get up and go. His stool is off balance. His life is going to be off balance for a while. But whatever was holding this young man back or keeping this man perplexed, our third character has overcome it. He's ready to get up. And I think this is so brilliant that Caravaggio gives us not one calling of St. Matthew, but three. And we can sit and look and place ourselves in each one of these three figures. And now adding to that, Caravaggio adds these two in the back. This old man, who I think is, if we just look at the painting, notice is exactly opposite Christ, is probably representing the Antichrist, the devil, temptation, whatever you want to call it. And he's whispering. He's keeping this young man focused on the money, on his life that's got him trapped, rather than what God is offering you. And I think it's so brilliant that he's placed in between these first two people, because the first thing you need to do is notice. And I think the hardest thing to do is going from living a selfish life to noticing how God is active in our world. So which one of these characters are you? And finally, here we have in the background, I think, the recreation. Remember, Christ's hand here is from the creation of Adam. And here we have, I think, a new creation, a young, innocent boy looking squarely at the church and leaning on the man who's just noticed. Because when you're called, it's essentially being reborn. He's going to become a brand new person with a new identity, represented in all of the hope and eagerness on this young boy's face. And so here we have it. Caravaggio has taken one sentence from the Gospel of Matthew and given us this rich scene, a scene that juxtaposes the historic humanity of Jesus with Caravaggio's own contemporary world, as exemplified in the close. And he's given us three different responses to the call: the man hunched over his money, the man startled, and the man ready to get up and go with Christ. So I hope this was helpful for you as you start to try to contemplate. Let your imaginations go wild. There's no right or wrong way to enter into these scenes. Place them in areas that are familiar to you. Put them here at Jesuit High School or in your own home as you gather with Jesus or watch the action of the Gospels play out. Good luck, gentlemen.